Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
Geshe.
Okay, we're just 4 people. I'm wondering whether anyone else is gonna join us, whether we should wait a minute a little.
I know that Talit is not will not be able to be today.
Okay.
Okay.
The numbers have really gone down. Just a sec. All right. Well, it's yeah, let's start. Just a sec. Yeah, let's start with the meditation. All right. Okay, as usual, we start with a few moments of breathing, just bringing the mind into the present. And then, as usual, visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you as an object of refuge and inspiration. And also think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Filling every space around you. And then remembering what we have in common with others, in particular the fact that ultimately we all want to be happy, don't want to suffer. And all of us have the potential to reach the awakened state of a Buddha. And so based on that sense that other sentient beings are just like myself, generate affectionate love, a feeling of closeness and acceptance. Seeing sentient beings as endearing and deservable of our love. And then focusing on the fact that sentient beings experience endless sufferings. Let's generate the aspiration for all sentient beings to be free from these sufferings, as well as the aspiration that may we be able to help sentient beings overcome all their suffering and its causes. Which then becomes stronger, turning into the special altruistic attitude that is fully determined to do whatever we can help all sentient beings overcome suffering and its causes. And since we can only really truly be of benefit to other sentient beings once we become fully awakened, let's generate bodhicitta, the mind that, for the benefit of every sentient beings, aspires to become fully enlightened. So with this in mind, let's recite the prayer. Oh yeah, there it is. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. All right. So I'll start sharing. Oh, Jimmy, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
From next week, Jimmy also cannot come because in my new house there's no internet and it's 2 a.m. at night. So I don't know. Maybe I will listen to the recording afterwards.
Okay, sure. Of course. Yeah, I got the message from Dalit. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, well, first of all, we still have some questions left from last time. So first, let me make sure you can all see the questions. All right. Can you, oops, what happened? Okay. Can you all see the questions? Can you read them? Are they big enough on the screen? Okay.
Little bit bigger would be better.
Okay, a little bit bigger. Just a sec. I hope I can manage. Yep. All right, this works, doesn't it? All right. I think I answered, Shmuel, I answered this first question. Yeah, I remember I answered the first question. Then, Jimmy, did I answer your first question? I think I...
Yes, the first one was, yes.
But
yes.
not the second one. Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. I always thought that on the path, the arhat to be has love and compassion and so on, but the finally liberated arhat has no love or compassion at all. Okay, no, this is, well, according to some explanations, there are some Buddhist tenet schools that say after an arhat became liberated, his or her continuum is severed. However, in the higher schools, for instance, in the Prasangika school, I mean, even the Chittamatra in the Svatantrika school, they don't accept this. It's an interesting idea that the arhat's continuum is I mean, this concept or this tenet, basically, that the arhat's mental continuum is severed. It was definitely taught by the Buddha for the purpose of certain disciples who maybe had this strong dislike for samsara, this strong sense, I just want to get out of it. And the thought of their mental continuum not going on kind of motivated them to work towards liberation, although that wasn't the case. That of course, their continuum went on. I mean, it didn't hurt. Their continuum wasn't severed. But as we know, some of the teachings of the Buddha are interpretative, need to be interpreted, and other teachings can be taken literally. So this teaching is not supposed to be, was not one of those teachings that can be taken literally. So as I said, there was a certain purpose teaching this in order to get practitioners on the path to becoming an arhat, but their continuum went on. And of course, as we know, all sentient beings become a Buddha at some point. So an arhat who follows the fundamental vehicle will eventually also, of course, attain the state of a Buddha. The fundamental, the same. Yeah. So therefore, that takes care of the rest of the question. Because it's just the elimination of ignorance and attachment, aversion, and so forth. It's a very peaceful and pleasant state to stay in, simply for the reason of the absence of these disturbing attitudes. So if there were no sentient beings, of course, there's also no compassion, but there are sentient beings. So the continuum goes on. And this, I don't know about this dependent arising with intention or without intention. Unfortunately, if I knew the Tibetan or remembered in what context Geshe talked about this, it's not like a common concept, dependent arising with intention or without intention. The only thing I could think of is like in the context, like a sentient being who has an intention versus sort of independently arisen phenomena with intention would be the sentient beings or living beings who have, sentient beings who have intention, and dependent arising without intention would be a dependently arisen phenomenon that doesn't have an intention. So that's the only thing I can think of, and I don't know what the term in Tibetan is, and sorry, I can't answer this. If you can tell me, if you can send or give me send to me or send it to Dalit, what recording it was or the link, then I can listen to it again and answer at some other time. Then my question relates to, is that okay? Or
It's excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. And then here, how are communication and dependent arising? I remember you talked about that. Well, let me just answer first one of Shmuel's questions. No, first let me do this is an older question. Okay, so how are communication and dependent arising related? How does dependent arising turn into communication? Well, first of all, the dependent arising doesn't turn into communication. Dependent arising is the basis for communication. So because phenomena exist in dependence, we can communicate. Here, the kind of dependence is mainly dependence on causes and conditions. So I say something, for instance, which becomes the cause of another person thinking about what I said, then responding to what I said, which becomes the cause of me again reflecting on what the other person said and responding again. So that is basically communication. Exchanging our views, I would say, expressing what we think, and in that way communicating. But it's like I say something that becomes the cause of the response for the other person says something that becomes the cause for my response, and so forth. So our responses, they act at each other. No, our statements, or no, our responses act as the causes of the other person's response. Or if you have two people, the responses each person gives act as each other's cause for the next response. Okay, as an example, let's say Geshe was talking now. That is a process of dependently arising sounds without my intention. Okay, without your intention, it's my intention, of course. I say something, there is an intention. Then we take turns. Next, I start talking about something. That is another process of dependently rising sounds. Yeah, dependently rising in the sense, exactly. So that's the conversation that you described between two people, communication. So my dependently risen sound depended on well, whatever it was, maybe I saw some danger or whatever, and I wanted to warn you, and then you say something, oh, but it's probably something else. So your dependently arisen sound depends on what I said to you, accompanied by your intention, but whether accompanied by my intention or not, isn't it at all just one continuous process of dependently arising sounds? Yes, absolutely. The communication, yeah, well, if you consider communication to refer to the sound, the actual words spoken, the intentionally spoken words, yeah, absolutely. So they're all dependently arisen sounds. And furthermore, isn't even my intention itself also just another dependently arisen process, sort of woven among the sounds? Yeah, that's true. So everything exists dependently arisen as a dependently arisen phenomenon. So therefore, communication is another example. One way of looking at it, can we call this process dependent arising? Yes, it's dependent, has dependently arisen. So the all this process, I mean, since it exists, it is a dependent arising. And looking at it another way, call it a process of communication. Can we call it both dependent arising and also communication? Yes, you can actually call it, yes. So you wouldn't say, does dependent arising turn into communication? No, communication is a dependent arising. Therefore, aren't we just referring to the same thing by two different names? No, no, no. At the same time, communication also lacks inherent existence. So you have a non-inherently existent sound. You have an impermanent sound. You have an independently arisen sound. So these are all the characteristics of communication. There are characteristics without which communication couldn't exist. So they're not referring to the same thing by different names, because dependent arising is not necessarily communication. A table is a dependent arising, but not a communication. So therefore, dependent arising is the underlying characteristic that all phenomena share, without which nothing would be possible. So I hope I answered this. Jimmy, is this a little clearer now? Okay, great.
I will listen a few times and I think about it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I spoke a little quickly, but yeah, if you listen again, hopefully it becomes clear, and then you can always ask again.
Yes, yes, thank you.
All right, and then is this today? No, that was for last time. Yeah, this is for today. No, this is not today. Okay, sorry. I need to find it. Questions. Yeah, this is for today. So I won't. Where's Shmuel's question? No, this is also not today's. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, oh yes, this is right. So Jimmy, I'll answer this question next time, and then I'll answer Shmuel's question, if that's okay. Okay. Oh, Shmuel, you also sent me a message. I still have to answer that. Sorry, I didn't have time to do that earlier. Okay. Why and for what type of practitioner is it important to know that reliable cognition of higher rebirth comes after the reliable cognition of the highest good? Okay. I mean, basically, a question is, what's the point? Why do we need this to practice the Dharma, right? I mean, for what type of practitioner? Is it absolutely necessary for every practitioner to know this? Can you not become liberated? Can you not become enlightened? Oh, I should make this a little bigger. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't think that's an absolute necessity. It's helpful to know, that's for sure. What's most important is to understand that we don't have to know everything. I mean, sometimes Buddhahood may be misunderstood, well, or not Buddhahood, but the path to Buddhahood, knowing that the result of enlightenment or Buddhahood is the omniscient mind of a Buddha. It involves the enlightened state of a Buddha. So people may misunderstand. Some people may think, oh, does that mean as you progress on the path, you have to know more and more and more and more and more in order then to become omniscient? The texts sometimes also talk about that, kind of saying, don't think that you become omniscient only if you accumulate more knowledge and get to know more and more things as a bodhisattva in order then to finally attain the enlightened state of a Buddha. That's not the case. But there's certain things we need to know, and there are relatively few things we need to know. Which one of them is, of course, emptiness, subtle impermanence, how all phenomena, or the fact that all phenomena are in the nature of suffering. Without an incontrovertible knowledge of these, we won't be able to progress on the path. Then, what about higher rebirth and the highest good? Do we need to realize them? Do we need to generate a cognition and a realization of these? Well, I guess eventually, yes. Though I haven't seen it anywhere that you have to know it. It's extremely helpful, or maybe it does say somewhere. I don't know. I can't remember right now. But it doesn't. It's nothing that is stressed a lot. That's for sure. But it's extremely helpful. It's extremely helpful to know higher rebirth, okay, but even more so, the highest good. And what does it mean that there are, to incontrovertibly know that there is liberation and enlightenment, which would be what would be so extremely helpful to knowing, to realizing it, to grow this determination, to generate determination to attain liberation, to attain enlightenment. But what do we need to know first? Well, we need to know emptiness first. So this process, I think, is important because we get to understand how the Four Noble Truths are connected, how the first two truths give rise to how the second truth gives rise to the first truth, and of course how the fourth truth is responsible for the third truth. So we get a full understanding of why we're here and how we get out of it. That is so important. That's the framework of everything. So in a way, yeah, understanding the Four Noble Truths is really realizing the highest good. And I guess at some point, yeah, without realization, it would be hard. I mean, just to be convinced is probably not enough. So I would actually opt for realizing the highest good, which means realizing the Four Noble Truths when it comes to liberation, but also when it comes to Buddhahood. And for that, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my phone on silence. For that, it's really important. Then with regard to higher rebirth, do you have to know that the higher rebirth, maybe not as important, but still it's definitely beneficial. And once you know those two, the rest is not difficult to know. So it's not that important. It's basically, yeah, you come to know that easily. But right now, because we don't know higher rebirth, we don't know the highest good, we haven't realized them, this is being pointed out here as part of the commentary. Shmuel, does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, great. All right. So that's enough for the questions. And then unfortunately, I thought I'd have so much time in Singapore, but then eventually the schedule became really full. I had to meet so many people that there wasn't really no time, which is why I had no time to even look at it. Anyway, so I came back. I was yesterday I had to do a few other things, but today I worked on it. So it's not a lot more, but we have enough to cover today, which is why it's not a big deal. And then I'll continue to work on it, on the new material. Okay, so where do we get to? All this is done. We finished verse number 3, then verse number 4. Sorry, I'm still looking for it. Okay. Here we go. So a brief identification of the causes and results regarding higher rebirth and the highest good. So just to get a short sense of what the causes and results with regard to higher rebirth refer to. In some of the translations, and I said this earlier, it says the causes and results of higher rebirth and the highest good. But I don't think that's a correct translation, although it literally says that. cat is trying to get into my room. The cat is hungry. Sorry, just need to chase the cat away. My neighbor is not there. Usually she feeds the cat. Anyway, so brief identification of the cause. So if I said the causes and results of high rebirth and the highest good, well, then that would imply not only am I talking about the causes of high rebirth and the highest good, which is no problem. That's what we're talking about. But then the results of higher rebirth and the highest good. So as if there were also certain results of higher rebirth and the highest good that we're talking about here. I mean, of course, higher rebirth and the highest good has results, but that's not what's meant here. We're talking about the causes of higher rebirth and the highest good. And the results are the higher rebirth and the highest good itself, which is why I'm putting it this way regarding higher rebirth. So the causes and the results with regard to or regarding higher rebirth and the highest good. So here higher rebirth is regarded as happiness and the highest good as liberation. All right. In brief, faith and wisdom are the concise means for attaining them. Okay, faith here, of course, needs to be explained. It's not blind faith. I'll explain that later. It's faith based on reasoning and on our own experience, of course. And then Geshe says in his commentary on this verse, here high rebirth is regarded as happiness, encompassing both happiness and equanimity in the mental continuum of celestial beings and humans. So a little bit further down, I explained equanimity refers to neutral feelings. The highest good is viewed as liberation achieved through the wisdom that realizes selflessness, thereby eliminating all suffering and its causes. It is termed the highest good, or actually more literally, the definitive good. That's the definite or the definitive good, because it is an irreversible state. So highest good in English, that's usually the translation that is used. But literally, it actually says definitive good. So I didn't want to change this translation highest good, but for the sake of explaining here why it is called this, I mean, definitive good, because it is an irreversible state of separation. So definitive means cannot be reversed. So state of separation from afflictive and or cognitive obstructions. Now I put this and or because, well, afflictive and cognitive obstructions would be the state of Buddhahood. Afflictive or cognitive obstructions, or is actually not necessary. Well, yeah, so or, no, actually it would be better to just say or. Afflictive obstructions would, of course, be liberation, and cognitive obstructions would be Buddhahood. Yes, Jimmy?
Would that help if we just heard the Tibetan? What is the Tibetan expression of highest good or definitive good?
Oh, wait, das quoi? Ngelek. Yeah, oh, I should put the Tibetan. I keep forgetting. Ngelek. Nge means like certain or definitive. Lek means good.
I like so.
Yeah, like so. Exactly.
Okay,
Same word.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Because it is an irreversible state of separation from afflictive or cognitive obstructions. I think that's better. The concise meaning for the concise means or methods for attaining the two results of faith and karma, the Four Noble Truths, the Three Jewels, and so on, and the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Okay, so in order to reach the first, the higher rebirth, we need faith, believing faith in this case. And like I said, I'll later explain this in more detail, what faith means, the different divisions, and what specifically is meant with faith here. And of course, in order to attain liberation or enlightenment, well, we need the wisdom realizing emptiness. The term in brief, where is it? In brief. So the term in brief here indicates a summary of the primary causes, while the earlier summary in the first two lines of the fourth verse, so the first two lines, I suppose that's what's meant, these two here, It doesn't explain anywhere what these two mean. Refers to the definitive number of results, higher rebirth and the highest good. Okay. All right. So now to explain this, as sentient beings, all the feelings we experience fall into three categories. Okay. Pleasant, happy feelings, unpleasant or suffering feelings, and neutral feelings, which are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Also sometimes described, the last category, sometimes described as equanimity. Equanimity, of course, has many different meanings in different contexts. But anyway, in this context, yeah, so equanimity here. Wait. Yeah. Is it equanimity? Yeah. So here in this context, it refers to neutral feelings. Now, as you can imagine, or as you may assume, feeling is extremely important in the texts, because of course we crave feelings, especially in the desire realm, but also in other realms. Feelings play such a huge part in our daily life. They're responsible for, of course, also our rebirth. At the time of, if you think of the 12 links, how it's feeling that gives rise to craving and grasping. And also, when thinking about selflessness, one of the difficulties we face when we reflect on the self not existing inherently, although it appears to our mind constantly, well, one of the difficulties is that our argument is, but I feel there's someone who feels good or doesn't feel good. If I, for instance, if we talk about, for instance, I and others is merely labeled. So put yourself into the other person's shoe, or become aware of the fact that I is only from my perspective. The I only exists from my perspective, but then from another perspective, from another person's perspective, from their perspective, I is that person. It's not me. But it doesn't really help, because our argument usually is, yeah, but I don't feel what they are feeling. I don't experience what they are feeling. So my pleasure, I know my pleasure, I don't know their pleasure. So again, feeling plays a huge part. And in our meditation, it's also important to generate a certain feeling, hopefully a pleasant feeling. I'll say a little bit more about that. Anyway, so these are the three types of feeling, extremely important to know about them. It's a little hard, like pleasant feeling. Oftentimes when we use terminology, it is actually, it describes, I mean, in Tibetan Buddhism, for instance, anger. Anger is a term, it's like a blanket term that actually refers to many different emotions. I mean, stronger anger, weaker anger. Weaker anger, we may not even recognize it as anger, but we use the kind of strongest term. Or to give you another example, suffering. We talk about suffering, dukkha. In English, you use the term suffering. But just a slight headache or being pricked by a needle, that falls into the category of dukkha or suffering, but we wouldn't necessarily in ordinary terms call it suffering. I mean, it's like, it's unpleasant. So here also with feeling, de in Tibetan, de can mean happy, it can mean pleasant. So I chose both. A pleasant, just a pleasant feeling, or an even stronger, like a happy feeling. So whether physically or mentally, a happy feeling in the body, it sounds a little weird, but like mentally, of course. And then unpleasant or suffering feelings, and neutral feelings. Yeah, well, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Anyway, these three can be further divided into physical feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and mental feelings of the same three types. Okay, so that's pretty clear. Now, in the lower realms, sentient beings generally experience primarily unpleasant feelings, as we know, as we heard many times. because their lives are dominated by severe physical suffering such as pain, hunger, thirst, illness, and exhaustion, along with mental distress manifesting as fear, anxiety, helplessness, confusion, and so forth. Now, this is a topic, the lower realms, which is definitely not one of our favorite topics. People learning about the Dharma, learning about Buddhism, there are certain favorite topics, love, compassion, emptiness. They're usually the ones that people want to hear about. The lower realms definitely are not the ones people sign up for. I mean, if you teach a course on the lower realms, who's going to sign up for that? Oh gosh, it just sounds so low, and and we don't even really believe in them. That's the thing. I mean, if you don't believe in rebirth, if you have a hard time with rebirth, then the lower realms are certainly not an option. But if you do consider, if you have a sense, well, reincarnation is possible, the mind must continue unto a next life, then the next point would be to reflect on the lower realms. And depending on your conviction or your faith in Buddhism, your belief in Buddhism, I mean, why would the Buddha talk about it? Talk about so many helpful things in terms of what we can practice in this life, in terms of dealing with our negative emotions, becoming more resilient, becoming basically more satisfied, but lie to us about everything else. I mean, what's the point? Why talk about the lower realms? Sneh, go ahead.
Kashima, I was wondering in the text, like, are the lower realms considered to be like actual places, or are they states of mind? Because I was just thinking, like, so many of these distressing mental states are here now with so many of us.
Okay, all right, okay. Now, let me ask you a question. If the lower realms are, as you're saying, and that's a valid point, if the lower realms are not actual places, is the human realm an actual place?
That's a good question.
Is the animal realm an actual place?
Yeah,
Right?
it's true. It's true then. It becomes all one big blob then.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. So the thing is, this is something I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to stress this. I think we've all heard about the example of the bowl of liquid a human being perceives as pus and blood. No, sorry. The human being perceives as water, the celestial being perceives as nectar, and the preta being perceives as pus and blood. All right. Now here you've got at least a bowl of nectar, but perceived very differently. And we also told that, for instance, there are some preta beings when they stand in front of a river, they don't see anything. They don't see any water. They see a desert. So instead of seeing liquid, they see just a dry space, which implied by that, which implies that it can be a totally different perception. So we always need to go back to that. Is there actually an external objective reality? And the word objective already gives it away. Is there really an objective reality? Or are these all mere appearances to our mind due to our karma? So that's an important phenomenon. And the thing is, well, today we're only a few people, but I wanted to ask you something. There are two pictures, two photographs that are very interesting that I'm going to show you in a minute. Which demonstrate that even as humans can perceive these two things as totally different, or at least not totally, but there's a difference, at least in terms of how they perceive color, which is quite fascinating. I'll show you these pictures just a sec. So the first picture is this, the famous dress. I don't know whether you've heard about the dress. Do you know this? Have you seen this before? It's the picture of a dress. It was shown by the BBC years ago, and it sparked this huge discussion. Can you all see the picture of this dress?
I know it from Kelsang Wangmo's teachings.
Yes. I know. I mentioned this before. Yeah. Okay. So now, please raise your hand if you see this dress to be blue and black. Blue and black. All right. Who sees it blue and black? All right. Okay. Who sees it blue and black? Who sees it as golden and light blue? Wow, isn't that fascinating? I mean, like just when I taught in Singapore, I mean, we had like a room full of people. We showed around this picture and they were like, how is this possible? I think it's 57% of human population sees this, of human beings see this as blue and black. It is actually sky blue and black. The golden, what I see as golden, these bits are black, and what I see as light blue or even white is actually sky blue. Okay, so it's fascinating. I just don't see what other people see. And in Singapore, there was actually one woman, one lady, she saw both. I don't know how she managed. So even as human beings, we have a different perception. You see the dress. Um, you know, if you talk, if you discuss, we see different things. Then I'll show you another picture, which is, wait, where did I put the other picture? Where's my picture gone? Oh, there you go. Can you see this shoe? Do you see the shoe? Okay. There are two options. Is it pink and white? Please raise your hand if it's pink and white. All right. If you see green and gray, raise your hand. So it's Snee and I. Oh, and then there's also Rami. Okay. Rami's Snee and I. We all see green. I mean, I see it as green and gray. And I know
No,
everyone
it's pink. It's
right.
pink.
And you know the funny thing, it's pink. I know, I know. Look, it's really so funny. When I was in Singapore, I showed it to the class. We discussed it. And before, in the evening, I looked at it, and again, I saw it as gray and green. It was actually one of the Singaporeans who came up with it. And in class, I saw it as pink and green. Then he showed it to me in the car. No, in the class, I saw it as green and gray. He showed it to me in the car, and I saw it as pink and white. Then when I was back home, it was again gray and green. And later on, it just kept changing. It was bizarre. Now it's gray and green. But if I'm tired, it turns pink. And I have no idea why. I have no idea what it is. There's some research, there's some theories on it, but it's just fascinating. We believe we see the same thing. And what we've just seen is we have different perceptions. Definitely when it comes to this shoe, and definitely, it just turned pink. Oh gosh, it just turned pink and white. Never mind. I'm just gonna close this. Anyway, so actually all you need to do is go to image of the dress, image of the shoe, and you find these two because they've become so famous. The point is, you see, of course, this has to do with our sense perception, etc. But all this is responsible for what we see. And being born human, we therefore have a very different perception of the human world that, for instance, a dragonfly has, or a marine shrimp. Apparently, marine shrimps see so many more colors than we do, while a dragonfly has almost a 360-degree perception. And then think of elephants, their incredible sense of smell and what they can hear, for instance, their incredible perception of sounds, dogs and cats, etc. So their perception of reality must be so different. What they see, I mean, we have no idea. Hawks and owls and so forth, so different. So they live in a very different world to ours. And they label their world differently. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they label their world differently based on the different appearances. So how do we know for certain that there's not also another realm where beings see something very different? The location may be the same. I mean, right where we are at this point, at this place right now, there are, of course, bacteria and small organisms that perceive something very different. I remember reading once we have like thousands of little organisms living in our eyebrows. I know it sounds really gross, but don't scratch your eyebrows too much. They will tumbling out. But anyway, the point is like, how do they perceive the world? They have a very different sense of reality. And then, well, why not beings that unfortunately, well, we don't share enough karma with them so we can perceive them in the sense that they have at least a similar perception. Or who knows, maybe they perceive what we perceive, but we just can't perceive what they perceive. So we have no idea. Definitely the celestial beings can perceive us, but we can't perceive them because their bodies are subtler. Ours are coarser. And then in the lower realms, again, we don't perceive them, whether they see us or not. I don't know. So why do we have such a hard time with this? But it's very interesting because, of course, it's understandable that we have a hard time with that. Simply because, well, simply means in comparison to Tibetans or anyone who's born Buddhist, traditionally Buddhist, they are Buddhist first. They believe what Buddhism tells us. If they were, for instance, were put in a monastery as children, they became monks when they were little, they were educated in the monastery. They're first Buddhist before they believe in science. They're introduced to science later on. And it's like everything they believe in, everything that they, their sense of reality. Yeah, but science, okay, to some degree, but they're skeptical. Whereas um, for us, it's like the other way around. First, we believe in science, and then Buddhism is like, yeah, we're still very skeptical. Which is just the way it is, and it's fine that way. But we mustn't forget we believe so much in science and so much in just this material world. I mean, we're so conditioned to think that whatever, science has proven. I mean, scientists would tell us no, there's still so much to be discovered. But I know plenty of people, I mean, back home, for instance, they believe science has discovered everything there is. And if scientists haven't discovered it, it can't exist. That kind of idea. Again, scientists wouldn't agree with that. But I'm thinking that, well, who knows? Maybe 20, 50 years from now on, they do somehow they're able to infer the existence of other realms. I mean, just as, I don't know, thousands or hundreds of years ago, people didn't know about the organisms that live in our eyebrows. So in the same way, of course, maybe science will recognize that. This has definitely helped me to get a better understanding of these different realms. Anyway, I think it's important to meditate on them, to not just dismiss them, because there's a reason, at least in the Lamrim Chenmo, of course, it's a whole big topic. It's considered important. So we should definitely give it a try. Oh, Jimmy, sorry, I just saw you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
Sorry. How do you think, coming from a Christian background, would that help? Like before believing that everything was made by God, it's a more easier change for the Buddhists, so that everything made by the mind.
Right. Okay, that's a possibility.
That's how I
Yeah,
think.
instead of saying God is the mind, everything is created by the mind. Yeah, definitely that is the idea. Um, that therefore our experiences are just a reflection of our mind, basically, of the mind we have right now as a result of our mind in a past life. Yeah, absolutely. But of course, in Christianity, you only have two realms. Whereas in Buddhism, you have well, more than that. So yeah, definitely. It was really interesting when I flew to Singapore. Um, the person who sat next to me was a Sikh person who had converted to Christianity and was now a priest. We talked about Christianity. I asked him whether I can ask some questions. And I think he was pretty much wanted me to be convinced of Christianity. It's like, oh, he was on and on and on. And his explanations were good. They sounded a bit like Indian philosophy. I mean, he nicely explained everything. It didn't sound like typical Christian explanations. And I asked him about heaven and hell, whether that's literal, and he said yes, and you will remain there forever. Okay, so that part was very traditional Christian. Anyway, it was really interesting. And in the end, he said, "Oh, isn't that interesting? On the whole flight, the Buddhist nun gets to sit together with a Christian priest." And he's like, "It's by the grace of God." And I couldn't agree to that. So I said, "No, that was the blessing of the Buddha." Anyway, so then we parted, of course, disagreeing with each other, but we had a good talk. Anyway, but returning to this here, well, again, I want to stress the importance of really giving this some thought. Wait, where is it? Where's the text? To give it some thoughts, and of course, more is to come. I'm going to talk especially about the higher realms a little bit more, the form and formless realms. Not so much about the realms, but what I would like to stress is just what is possible when it comes to our own mind, to get a better sense of what our mind can attain, what kind of states, what concentrations it can attain, and in what way these states of mind are responsible for taking birth in very special states. Although there's samsaric, but I still find it's helpful to just know about them. I'm not going to go into much detail, but just give you a rough sense of what are called the four concentrations, which are actually four states of the form realm, and then I briefly talk about the formless realm. Again, from the point of view of what is possible, how it comes from the mind, and what our mind can actually attain. And these meditative absorptions that are responsible for rebirth in the form and formless realm are, of course, also very important when practicing meditation. So they're also utilized in our Buddhist practice, but not to be reborn there. So anyway, having said all this, I think it is important. Oh, Rami, yes. Rami, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question. Like when you are talking about a mind, let's say, is there any definition in the Dharma? What does it mean? Like, for example, I will give few directions could possibly be. Like from my relative understanding, all the phenomena are interdependent and in constant change, meaning also, like, I don't know, is there two separate minds of me and you? Or is it like big mind of everyone and it's just interconnected? Like how does the Dharma look for me?
Okay. A big mind being interconnected. Well, if we would all be part of the same big mind, then there would be just one mind manifesting in different ways, I guess. And that's not the Buddhist view at all. No, we have separate individual mental continua. But these mental continua, due to our body and our speech, we can communicate what we're thinking, for instance. We can communicate with one another. Or even more so, I mean, it's even possible for different minds to communicate, not on our ordinary level as human beings, but certain advanced beings can actually mentally communicate. And even, well, some identical twins are said to be able to mentally, but anyway, that's definitely an unusual phenomenon. But yeah, so the point being, we all have a different type of mind. Sometimes people like to use the analogy, and this is not something I agree with, but sometimes people say, oh, Buddhahood is like becoming all we kind of re-enter the big ocean of the mind, seeming to suggest that there's some overarching mind that we've separated from, but become one with again. So no, in Buddhism, you don't have that idea, except when you think of our minds being like drops in an ocean. Every drop is different, and all the different drops make up the ocean. So every drop has its own continuum. So in that sense, okay, that would actually be in accordance with Buddhism. But anyway, the point is, yeah, your continuum is different from my continuum, and still we're very much interacting with each other, and we act as each other's cause. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I hope it wasn't too confusing. Yeah, anyway, you have your continuum, I have my continuum, and still we affect each other. All right. Yes, so anyway, I'm not going into more of the suffering and pain of the lower realms. That's not part of this particular section here. But I want to say something else about meditation, about analytical meditation, that I think I haven't stressed enough. I've said it on a few occasions, but teaching in Singapore, I've stressed it there so many times. And so I'm coming back now to do the same here. And I think it's in reaction to what some people ask. I realize that analytical meditation is greatly misunderstood. Analytical meditation to a lot of people seems to refer to a cerebral, a kind of a simple kind of intellectual activity, nothing more than that. So to just reflect on something, and then, you've done it for 15 minutes, meditation done. That is not by any means enough. This is not enough in terms of what it means to meditate. Of course, you start off meditating on something. However, what's most important is, first of all, to come to a conclusion. I've stressed that on a few occasions, but also to have an emotional response. To have an emotional response. Because if it's just this kind of intellectual, somewhere just up in the brain, for a lack of a better way of saying it, and so it's not coming from deep within, from your emotions, but rather if it just happens in the brain and in your head, if it's just an intellectual, cerebral kind of activity, it won't affect us, and it will be boring. We get bored. I mean, we'll do it a day or two, and then we're like, oh, what's the point? So boring. No, it's important to trigger an emotional response. Why is it important? Well, this kind of meditation, so I'm talking about a meditation where first you start thinking about something. So it is an intellectual analysis, which sooner or later should turn into an emotional response, which then also enables you to stay single-pointedly focused on something particular, on a particular conclusion, which then triggers a certain behavior. Okay, so this is, of course, from a positive point of view, positive in the sense of meditating on reality, meditating on impermanence, emptiness, or what have you, in order then to trigger a positive response, positive emotional response, which then positively affects our behavior. Now, on a negative, with going through the same process in a negative way, well, we do it all the time. We do it all the time. So let's say you're with some people, you're sitting around with them, and there's one person you've helped a lot, you've been really kind to, you've tried to help, and this person suddenly insults you. What happens is you start thinking. Why are they saying that? First, it's just an analysis. There's no feeling yet. It was pretty fast, like, why are they saying this? I don't deserve this. What did I do to them? There's a short reaction of when it's just an intellectual kind of activity, but then sooner or later a feeling arises. You're getting upset. There's a feeling of you're upset. Oh, how dare they? This is terrible. And then anger arises as another emotional response, and you're like single pointed. I mean, when we're angry, we can be so focused, we can't think of anything else, right? I mean, I'm sure we all had our moments when we were so upset about something, we don't pay attention to anything else. That's concentration at its best. That's when we're so focused. Or using another emotional response, which would be attachment. If we're super attached to something, again, there's first an intellectual kind of activity, reflecting, investigating on the object of attachment, how it makes us feel, etc. And then this good feeling arises, attachment arises, and we're so focused. So now we're trying to undo this, because this process that I just described, analysis, emotional response, that affects our actions. That is all based on an analysis that does not accord with reality, that is influenced by our misperception, and that, of course, leads to suffering. Now we need to undo this. We need to undo this using the same process, but initially it is fake. It is fake. It's fake it until we make it. That's truly, it's all about that. Our Dharma practice in the beginning is fake. There's a lot of fake stuff we're doing. I mean, Tonglen is a good example, right? Knowingly, we're doing a particular meditation that we know is not realistic, but highly effective. Meditating on bodhicitta, the 3 types of bodhicitta: king-like bodhicitta, shepherd-like bodhicitta, and ferryman bodhicitta, right? Like visualizing, I take all sentient beings to enlightenment first, so the shepherd-like bodhicitta. It's impossible. If you want to lead other sentient beings to enlightenment, you have to go there first. It's like when you fly in a plane and it tells you, in the unlikely event of loss of cabin pressure, gas mask will fall down from the ceiling. Put that on yourself first before helping others. Right? It's the classic example. First, you need to put on the gas mask yourself before helping others, because you'll faint before you're able to help anyone. So similarly here, first we have to become enlightened ourselves before we can actually help others. However, we nevertheless meditate on the possibility, we meditate on taking everyone first in order to increase our love and compassion. So anyway, this is not fake it until you make it so much, but well, practicing tantra, we visualize to become a Buddha, until eventually our visualization and, of course, other practices actually enable us to become a Buddha. So in the beginning, it's fake. It's fake. It's not actually happening. However, that is the power of our mind. Our mind doesn't know it's fake. Our mind doesn't know it's fake. Our brain doesn't know it's fake, unless you keep thinking it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. You have another mind the whole time interrupting you. As you do the meditation, from within emptiness, I arise as, I don't know, the Buddha of compassion, for instance. And if there's in the back of your mind again and again, or the back of your mind, I mean, if there's another mind constantly interrupting, yeah, but I'm not a Buddha, I'm not a Buddha, then it won't be effective. Well, if you keep focusing on that, using this psychological method that even athletes to a certain degree use, visualizing their wonder race, visualizing they can do this complicated, I don't know, somersault or whatever. Well, they are then able to actually do it. They leave imprints in their mind, of course, create new pathways in their brain. Well, similarly, we do that when we practice. And we shouldn't see it as a negative kind of fake, but fake it. Fake it nonetheless. So we start meditating, for instance, on the lower realms, just visualizing these different states. Of course, initially to understand the fact that everything is merely an appearance to our mind. Basically, when we talk about existence, and the texts, they use this vocabulary, everything is just an appearance to the mind. So think of the liquid that appears differently due to different people's karma. Because of the karma we've accumulated, we have a body and a mind that that trigger certain appearances. I mean, even modern science tells us there are no colors out there. There are just light waves. There are no sounds out there. They're just pressure waves. There's no smell. They're just particles that react with the molecules that react with the receptors in our nose, or with regard to taste, the taste buttons on our tongue. And if we have, I think we have 10,000 receptors on our tongue, while I read the other day a cow has 15,000. Well, you have a different experience from a cow, right? Because we have less taste buttons, and there are other animals that have even more. I forget now which, oh, no, I forget now which animals there are. Anyway, having a lot more taste buttons and having a very different experience. So it all depends on our body, mainly what sense experiences we have. The external, well, there is no red, there is no blue out there. There is no, I don't know, song by the Beatles. They're just these out there, at least, not the way we perceive it. So if you really reflect on this again and again, you are able to move away from that sense of there's this external world existing objectively out there. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist conventionally out there. It does exist conventionally. So we're not saying mind only school, where only the mind exists truly. No, the external world and we exist equally. Well, equally exist in the same way, lacking inherent existence, of course, but being dependently arisen, existing conventionally. But that doesn't mean that there's this objective world out there. So when we reflect on this long enough, well, why not other living beings? So many other living beings. What makes us think there's just us and maybe some animals that we can eat possibly, or we can explore? Exploit, sorry, not explore, exploit and explore. So what makes us think that is the case? And of course, we shouldn't just think that there's only this Earth. There are so many planets. There's so many galaxies on which, from a Buddhist point of view, there's definitely life on these different, I mean, the Buddhist texts talk about endless worlds with similar existences like our. And I'm saying similar, not the same, which science very much supports. So really to think bigger, to think vaster, to not just think, oh, there's just what I see is there. I mean, we really have this instinctive sense what I perceive as right. I mean, I go into someone's room and I go, oh, they've got a funny taste. Who puts up curtains like that? What does it show me? As if they were an objective good taste. Yeah, we say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, but honestly, it doesn't feel that way. So to not be fooled by this sense, our automatic kind of instinctive sense, there's this objective reality out there, but rather to get in touch with the mind that, or with our understanding that that's impossible. Using modern science, of course, modern physics, the way I just talked about colors and sounds, for instance, but also using the Buddhist text. And they support each other. They support each other. And so then to take into, to consider the possibility that there's other life, that there are other forms of existence, even without actually reincarnation. Yeah, you can leave that out for the time being. I said earlier on, you need reincarnation for that, but that's actually not true. I mean, I don't need reincarnation to know that there are whales and shrimps. So likewise, I don't need reincarnation to come to a conclusion that there are lower realms where there's incredible suffering, which for those beings is absolutely real because they have a body different to ours that experiences that. And then when you do that, have an emotional response. What could that be? Wow. Right? I mean, that's an emotional response. Being moved. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Or compassion. How terrible. Or gratitude. How fortunate I am. Oh my God, I'm constantly complaining and constantly, miserable about this, that, and the other. But I'm human. I'm not being burned alive the whole time. I'm not deprived of food and drink. I have everything, I'm thirsty. I can drink something. So appreciation, gratitude, it's so many emotional responses that help us to take this to a different level, to make it part of our reality. And that help us, of course, also to focus on our conclusion, to first analyze and focus on whatever insight we come to while remaining in a particular emotional state. Keeping that emotion, that's supposed to be, well, that's of course a positive emotion. We're trying to trigger a positive emotion. That's how analytical meditation is highly effective, but it's also fun because we like to be awed. We like to be amazed. We like to feel gratitude and appreciation. We like to feel compassion. They're positive states of mind that make us feel good, basically. So in emotional response, this is quite interesting, because also in modern psychology, they talk about emotional responses having three main characteristics, and that's totally in accordance with Buddhism. First of all, it's completely subjective. Okay, anyway, that's not a big deal because from a Buddhist point of view, every mind is completely subjective. But that first characteristic is usually also mentioned as one of the characteristics. The second is a physiological response, an immediate physiological response, as part of the, what is it called? The peripheral nervous system. So we're not talking about the central nervous system, brain and uh, spinal or nerve system that runs along the spine, but mainly about the peripheral nervous system. So when we have any kind of emotion, when there's anger, there's right away a physiological response. We feel uncomfortable, our blood pressure is rising. When there's fear, there's the kind of flight kind of reaction. Our blood goes into our legs so we can take off. In the case of anger, it goes into our fists so we can fight back, for instance. So there's certain physiological responses. From a positive point of view, there's also a physiological response. We feel calmer. We feel good. We feel calmer, as in like our blood pressure dies down, or it goes down, not dies down, but it goes down. I don't know, positive chemicals are released in the body. So there's definitely this physiological response, a positive one. And then there's also, as a result of our emotions, there is an expression, there's a response, like a response in terms of our actions. So it triggers certain actions, not the physiological response that is involuntary, but it also motivates us to act in a certain way. So if they're negative emotions, of course, it motivates us to, I don't know, maybe hit the other person or at least take off or gossip about them. While here during the meditation, when we meditate, of course, we want a positive response in the form of virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. So again, we have all three in the case of, like, for instance, meditating on the lower realms, and as a result of that, having compassion, for instance, generating compassion or gratitude. It's subjective, yes, absolutely, the first characteristic. Then there's, secondly, a physiological response, an involuntary response, whatever that is, but it's usually a positive one. I guess if you do it right, always a positive one. And then lastly, it gives rise to certain responses, certain expressive actions. So actions in the form of, tomorrow or the day after, or maybe an hour from now on, that our actions are now influenced by this meditation. Now, this is analytical meditation. I think it's really important to be aware of this. Oh, okay. So today I keep checking the time to be able to do a meditation, of course. So we could actually try it out, except we didn't do much today. But we could possibly jump a little bit and do a meditation on those three realms and just briefly reflect on them, the hell being the hungry ghost and the animal. I can briefly go through that. So we won't have to do it next time, but at least we could try what I just said. We could try it out. Okay, great. So just a sec. I need to find it in my text as well, so then I can stop sharing the screen. Do you have the text? Do all of you have the text? Anyway, I'm guiding you through it. You're not supposed to look at the text. Sorry, that was forget about that question. No, but I send it to Dalit. This is the newest material. It'll probably still slightly change. I'm still working on it. So until next Monday, it may still change. But anyway, for the time being, that's the new material. And then let's start with a meditation. And of course, as always, we'll start with a few moments of breathing meditation just to get the mind settled. And then let's take a moment to reflect on the fact that there's no objective reality. As modern science tells us, there are no external colors or sounds the way we perceive them. So that even as human beings, we may perceive colors quite differently from each other. Without being aware of that. And of course, when thinking about the example of a bowl of liquid, different living beings, such as pretas, humans, celestial beings, have a very different perception depending on their individual karma. So basically, all our experiences are mere appearances to the mind. All our sense perceptions are the results of the karmic actions we've accumulated in the past. So therefore, couldn't it be possible that there are beings who have hellish experiences right now? As a result of extremely negative actions accumulated in the past. Experiencing the pain of their bodies being burned. Or cut into pieces. Or constantly being cold. The body slowly turning into ice. And how about beings in the Preta realm? Who suffer extreme deprivation. Great hunger and thirst. Driven by relentless and insatiable desires. Some of them perceiving a desert, where we as humans would see a clear lake, with clean water. And then there's, of course, the experience of the animal realm. of the different animals who live on land and those who live in the water. And during the harsh conditions of the natural world, again as a subjective expression of the individual karmic imprints. Experiencing heat, cold, hunger, and thirst. Being hunted. Exploited. Killed to be eaten. Unable to effectively free themselves from their misery. But we, on the other hand, despite our problems and difficulties, face none of these problems, none of these sufferings experienced in the three lower realms. So let's generate a deep sense of gratitude. Combined with determination to not waste this precious opportunity. Free from suffering that prevents us from practicing the Dharma. And let's, of course, also spend a few moments without letting go of our emotional response. Spend a few moments focusing on whatever conclusion we've come to. And then finally, let's dedicate all the positive potential we've accumulated by thinking, may whatever positive karma we've accumulated through this meditation, may this become a cause for us to attain the fully awakened state of a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. But may this positive potential also become a cause for our great lamas, our kind lamas, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other living masters. May help us, may cause our lamas to have a long and healthy life, so that they can continue to teach us through their examples and their words. And may, of course, may this virtue also cause the war to be over very soon. All those kidnapped be released right away, and the suffering on both sides subside. So with this in mind, let's recite the prayers. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Jinrezi Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Geshe-ma.
I see you again on.
Thank you, Geshe.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
See you again on Monday. Next class will be on Monday. Yes.
Labab Dushen Tashi Delek.
Oh, Labab Dushen Tashi Delek. It's on Friday, right? Yeah, Friday. Okay. All right.
Thank you. See you
Bye-bye.
Monday.
See
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you, dear. Bye.